In this video, I'm going to be running through 10 top tips to help you get out there and start carp fishing. Before you start carp fishing in the UK, it is probably the most important thing to make sure that you've got a valid EA rod licence. A rod licence, believe it or not, it's your licence to be able to go fishing. These can be purchased on the government website and can last anything from 1 day up to 365 days of the year. Now me personally, since I go fishing probably 9 days a week, it's more cost effective for me to be able to buy a rod licence which lasts the full year. But if you're someone who's maybe only going to go fishing 1 or 2 times throughout the full year, it's probably best off that you go on the website and you just buy day licences for the days when you go on fishing. If you're over 12 but under 16, you still need a rod licence, but luckily you don't have to purchase these. But yeah, make sure that you've got a rod licence, because I've seen people get caught without them, and yeah, it's just not worth the ag or paying the fine. So yeah, get yourself a rod licence before you do any carp fishing. Once you've got your rod licence, you then need permission from the lake owner to be able to fish and try and catch a few of the carp which are living in there. Now in the UK, lakes are run in different ways. Some of them are privately owned, so you're not going to be able to fish there. Some will be owned by the council, and 9 times out of 10 these venues tend to be free fishing. However, the two probably most common forms of fisheries that you're going to find in the UK are either day tickets or club waters. A day ticket will be a lake or complex of lakes where you're able to turn up any day of the year, pay a small amount of money to have permission to fish that lake for the length of time that you've paid for. You can go whenever you want, but obviously the longer that you stay or the more that you go, it does start getting quite expensive, and if that isn't within your budget, then it's worth checking out club waters or syndicates. A club water or a syndicate will be a venue where you'll purchase a ticket. However, unlike a day ticket where you have to keep buying depending on how long you're fishing, this ticket will last the full entire year. Now that you've got your licenses and permission to fish, it's time to pick the venue where you're going fishing. Now, again, this is really important, because if you pick the wrong venue, you're just going to lose motivation completely. I'm a greedy person. I absolutely love catching lots and lots of fish, and because of that, the venues that I pick to go carp fishing are high stock venues. It'd be no good me picking a 100-acre lake with 3 carp in there, because reality is I'm probably going to blank. So yeah, I pick high stock venues because I want to catch loads of carp. However, maybe you're going fishing for a different reason. Maybe you're just wanting to relax by a lake, and if that's sort of your motivation to get out there, then I'd pick somewhere where there's nice wildlife, nice scenery, nice and quiet. Or maybe you're going to try and get out there and target some big carp, and if that's your thing, have a look online, speak to a few people, and try and find a venue where there's maybe a couple of big carp that you're going to be able to go out there and try and target. Location, location, location. If you're a carp angler, you'll be sick to death of hearing this word, but if you mess up location, you're just gonna blank. When you turn up to a lake, you want to locate where the carp are held up. It's very rare that the carp are going to be evenly distributed around the lake. It's likely they're going to be held up in one area. That might be because the wind's blowing down there, or it might be because there's less anglers down there, so the fish feel a little bit safe there. Whatever the reason is, you want to find out where this area is, because if you can find it, you're set to have a great session. So the first thing that I like to do when I turn up to any lake, whether it's my first trip there or I've been there before, is I'll take the first hour or so to lap the lake, speak to anglers, see what's getting caught, see who's blanking, see who's catching, and by doing that I'm going to build a bit of a picture where I want to do the session. While doing that lap, I'll be using my eyes and I'll be trying to physically see a few carp in the lake. This might be carp cruising around under the surface, it might be a little bit of fizzing, it might actually be carp jumping out. But by putting that extra time and effort at the start of the session to locate them, it just makes fishing so much easier. One little item that I like to take when I'm doing watercraft and I'm trying to locate the carp is a good old set of Polaroids. These are basically sunglasses, but what they do is they just take the glare off the surface, especially when it's sunny, and it just helps you see a little bit deeper in the lake. When you start carp fishing and you go into a tackle shop, you'll be absolutely mind blown. There are so many different types of tackle items out there, so many different baits to try. You won't know what to buy, and you'll just want to buy absolutely everything. And there's just a few items that I'd say are essential in catching your first carp. The first one, pretty obvious, is a fishing rod and a fishing reel. You don't need to spend hundreds of pounds on a rod. This rod here is a 9-foot, 3-pound test curve dwarf rod, and on there I've got an LR 6000 reel. Now, The dwarf range is the cheapest rods that Nash do. However, just recently I actually went over to France and I caught carp to over £40 on these rods, which just goes to show, although they're cheap, they're more than capable of catching big carp. When getting into carp fishing, there are different test curves in different lengths. I'd probably recommend getting a 9 or a 10-foot rod to begin with, just because they're easier to control before you step up to a 12 or a 13-foot, but that is completely down to personal choice. Again, test curve, personal choice, but I'd recommend something around a £3 test curve. It's going to be soft enough to play carp on, but also you're going to be able to chuck a lead out into the lake. Just as important as the rod and reel is the landing net. When you catch a carp, especially a big carp, you're not going to be able to swing it in your hand. You're going to need a net to be able to land the carp. Now in the UK, pretty much any venue will state in the rules that you need a landing net, and some of them will have specific sizes. My advice is just buy the biggest landing net that you can, because the last thing that you want to do is get caught out fishing a venue and you don't have the correct size landing net, or even worse, you hook a big carp and you can't fit it in the net. As well as the landing net, make sure that you've got an unhooking mat. Once you've landed the carp, you want somewhere to be able to put the carp for photos. You don't want to be putting the carp on the ground, because it's not going to do the fish any favours whatsoever. As well as the rod, reel, net and unhooking mat, it's important to make sure that you've got hooks and a little bit of bait. Down here today I've got a bucket, in there I've got boilies. However, there are cheaper alternatives. You could use sweet corn or you could use bread. They're fantastic baits for carp. And on my back there I've got a rucksack. In the rucksack itself I've got my tackle box. In the tackle box I've got things like my hooks, swivels, anti-tangle sleeves, hook links, anything that I need throughout the day to be able to tie a rig to try and catch a carp. I've been carp fishing now for probably 12, 13 years, and still to this day it absolutely blows my mind how many different rigs are out there. When you read articles, when you watch videos online, there's just so many different variations, and it can be a proper head scramble as to which rig you should use. Now, all those years ago, the first rig that I ever learnt to tie when carp fishing was a simple hair rig. And the rig that I use today, which is a blowback rig, it's pretty much the same rig, just with a few variations. The blowback rig, for me, I just find it a little bit more effective compared to a hair rig. And if you're wanting to learn how to tie that rig, I've actually got a step-by-step video on this channel and the reasons why I like this rig so much. But if that's a little bit complicated, like I said, a simple hair rig, all you need there is your hook and your hook link material. And despite there being so many different variations and different mechanical rigs out there, I think keeping things simple is by far more effective than other rigs out there. I don't know what it is, but when I put bait out into a lake, 20 minutes later, I just feel like I need to put more bait out. It's just so addictive, whether that's with a catapult, spodding, throwing it in by hand. But if you overbait the swim, you will just kill the carp fishing off completely. So once I've put the rigs out at the start of the session, or at any point of the session, I'll only put a small amount of bait over the top. This might be a couple of handfuls, a couple of catapults, or a few spods. But the reason I think it's important to bait up light is it's enough bait there to draw the carp in and get a bite. And once you've caught that first carp or you've had a couple of bites, you're then able to bait up more over the top. If you put all your eggs in one basket, put a load of bait on a spot, you sort of feel like you've got to sit on your hands and wait it out. Even if all the carp are boshing up the other end, you're likely to just sit it out and you're not going to move. But by baiting up light, you haven't put all your eggs in one basket and you're able to make the most of an opportunity elsewhere. As I mentioned earlier on in the video, people go fishing for different reasons. Some people, they just want to go out and relax. Other people, they want to go and try and catch as many fish as possible. But one piece of advice that I'd be given to a new carp angler is try and go out there with a friend or a group of people. And the reason for this is, even to this day, I've been carp fishing for God knows how long, but I just have so much more fun when I'm there with a couple of people. The reason is, when you're carp fishing, I'm not saying it gets boring, but there will be periods of time where you sort of sat on your hands, waiting for the carp to feed, waiting for a bite. And if you're there with a couple of friends, you're able to bounce off each other, keep each other occupied. And then when you do catch a big carp, you're able to share that buzz in that moment with other people who enjoy fishing. And my final tip for when you're starting carp fishing is, don't be afraid to ask for help. When I started carp fishing, I did not have a clue what I was doing. Even if you've got a question and you think it's the most stupidest question in the world, just get it answered. Ask a friend, ask a bailiff, message me, leave it in the comment box below. And trust me, all carp anglers will try and help you and guide you into catching your first carp. I hope you've learnt a thing or two from this video, and more importantly, I hope it does help you put a few carp in the bottom of your landing net. Like I said, if you've got any questions, leave it in the comment box below. Make sure to leave it a like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the bank sometime.